So, welcome. You want to grab a soda there?
Yeah, you saw me.
Yeah, get it, dude.
Getting a little anxious.
Yeah, it's all good. So we've got Mr. Lance here, one of our forum members, 4LowLance on Instagram. That's great.
That is me. That is me.
That's you. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about our last trip we did. Was it 2 weeks ago through Death Valley?
Time flies. I've been thinking about it all week.
Yeah. And so that was the name of the trip was the Lonely Pinos 250. And we'll do a deep dive into that in just a little bit. But first, a little bit about you, Mr. Lance. So how'd you get into off-roading?
I grew up around sports car racing. My dad and his buddies were sports car guys, but my dad was always a dirt bike guy. So I grew up in the desert. It was funny. My dad made it sound like there was this big difference between sand guys and desert guys, and we were clearly like desert guys. And so I grew up riding dirt bikes my whole youth. Did a little desert racing as a teenager, and was always really fascinated with the four-wheel drive stuff. But every time my dad puts a lot of miles on trucks, and as a kid, every time you go to buy a new truck, I'm like, "Oh, you gonna get a four-wheel drive?" He's like, "Not this time. I don't think we need it." So I was always fascinated by it, but loved riding dirt bikes. Rode dirt bikes with my dad for years. Got into mountain biking. Did some mountain bike racing as a teenager, and then.
Oh, really? Where at?
Big Bear.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, just 2 or 3 years of.
Is that like Summit?
Yeah, Snow Summit would have been like, I don't know, 03, 04, 05,
okay.
yeah.
Sweet.
But
I didn't know that. I knew you rode a little bit.
Yeah, I ride a little bit now, but no, it was just fun. That's what me and my buddies were doing, and
it
was a good time. And God, one of my best memories was I was like 16 years old. My parents always gave me a long leash, and I printed out the who put on those races at Snow Summit. It was like whatever that organization was. I printed out their waiver. My parents signed it, and I took off and literally slept in the parking lot and raced by myself and came home at like 16 years old, and it was fun. So I just laugh whenever like somebody doesn't want their 16-year-old to like go do something. Drove all the way to Big Bear Race and I came home at 16.
Yeah, times have changed a little bit, I guess.
Right, but I remember that trip because I was sleeping in the back of a Jeep Grand Cherokee because I was always fascinated with the four-wheel drive stuff, and it was like a Christmas present when I was like 10. My dad brought home this like a CJ5. It was like a $200 piece of crap Jeep, and then like we never really got it running, but we ended up then into a CJ8. He'd kind of bartered and traded. My dad always likes making deals. We ended up in a pretty rough like 80s Jeep CJ Scrambler, and we went up hunting one day up in Los Padres. We didn't see a quail, we didn't see a bird all day, but we picked around the river bottoms. And dude, we were in low range, just bouncing around, and I just had like the time of my life. And my dad had a ton of fun too. And
that's awesome.
We came home, and my mom was driving a minivan. He's like, "All right, here's the deal. We're going to sell your minivan, and I'm going to sell the Scrambler, and we'll get you a four-wheel drive." My mom was like, "All right, that's cool." So mom had a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I grew up, as a teenager. "Oh, hey, Mom, can I borrow the car real quick?" And find some hill and put it in low range and playing around. And dude, I loved it. Yeah, I thrashed it. I took it to Baja when I was 18. It came back smelling like 4 stinky boys. My mom still hasn't forgiven me for that. But yeah, and I had a 4x truck in high school. It was a 1970 K10 with, it had 307 gears, SM 465 manual transmission with a granny low, and then like a big hot rod motor with like 450 horsepower. It was undrivable on 35-inch tires. It was totally undrivable. So never really wheeled that thing. Drove it around, sounded cool.
Yeah.
It had dual 4 barrels, and it was like badass, but it was, I never wheeled it. I took it to Pismo once.
But so you've been in the game for a little bit, for sure then.
Yeah, I'm realizing now, like the last few years, I'm like, wow, off-roading is my entire life.
Yeah.
There's work and there's off-roading.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, so obviously, I've just recently met you in person, but since whenever you did that trip up to, I think it was Alaska in your Dodge, you had that Dodge with the service bed on it. And what was that trip all about?
Yeah, somewhere because I got married young, and so I was always not very ambitious now. I was fairly ambitious 10 years ago. And I was like, all right, I want to drive to the tip of Baja before I'm 25, and I want to drive to Alaska before I'm 30. And so, how did I get that truck? My wife ended up with a Jeep. When we were dating, my wife got a Cherokee, a 2-wheel drive Cherokee. We put a little 3-inch lift and 31-inch tires on that. Dude, we took that thing everywhere. 2-wheel drive Cherokee with a limited slip goes, dude, it mobs.
Goes places?
Yeah, it goes places. Eventually bought a rolled 4-wheel drive and converted it. And we took that thing everywhere. When my kids were little, we took it everywhere. And when the kids were little, I ended up buying that Dodge. It was 1997 Dodge Ram, 12-valve, extra cab, long bed. And so this is where my dad's a fantastic father. But dude, my dad did me dirty by, he's too conservative. He would always be like, oh, don't put too big of tires on it. So I drove that stupid truck around on a 285 series tire for, I guess it wasn't all bad because I was towing. We had a travel trailer at the time. But I remember when I finally went on Craigslist and I found a set of 37-inch tires, and I put 37-inch tires on that thing, and it was like, if you don't put the biggest tire you can fit on something, like
100%.
Are you even having any fun? I was like, my dad lied to me.
Yeah.
For 30 years, 25 years, you know, because I put 37s on that truck, and I was like, oh, this is what life is all about.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so I had that Dodge, and it was still had a regular pickup bed on it, a camper shell, when I got the opportunity to co-drive in the Baja 1000 in a Class 5 unlimited car. So my dad and I drove that truck all the way to La Paz. It was a peninsula run with a camper shell on it. And I just absolutely loved that truck. And shouldn't have sold it, but put a utility bed on it, put a rooftop tent on it, put big shocks, 2.5. You put king shocks on it all the way around. And
those are quite a bit bigger than the stock shocks.
Yeah, quite a bit bigger than, yeah.
They foam less quicker.
Well, no, it was a Dodge Trucks Extreme, which is like a Dodge Trucks website. I met up with some of those guys, and I thought I was hot shit because I just put remote reservoir 2.0 Bilsteins on that truck.
Oh, yeah.
And we all went down to, on a truck that weighs 8,000 pounds. We went out to Anza Borrego, and all these trucks just went, shoo. It's like, oh.
Dang, yeah.
37s are cool, but you also need big shocks.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need big shocks.
Well, especially
big
with
shocks are cool.
that big of a truck, you do.
So, dude, I remember I had a 68 Mustang. It was pretty rough, and I sold it. I think I got like $7 or $8 grand for it. It was pretty rough. I literally put all of that money into the front end of that truck.
Wow.
Put $6,000 into, DOM tie rods with Heim joints and...
Was it like a Carly kit, or what was on that?
No, it was kind of... Most of the parts were Thurin. The shocks were from Thurin. I put an axle truss on it. I put Ram assist steering on it. And you know how it goes. Just things get expensive fast. But no, that truck worked really good. So, to your point, my daughter and I, we drove it to Alaska. She was 7 years old. Mm-hmm. We took off, and it was kind of early season. It was like May. And, dude, it was like... You don't know it then, and I'm still not that old, but like... That was a trip of a lifetime. Mm-hmm. Like, my daughter and I have always been close. She's 13 now, but at that time, like, dude, kids don't know any better. They know what you tell them, So you tell them you were getting in the truck and we're leaving for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
They don't know. What are they going to do? Argue with you?
Sure.
And, yeah, dude.
That's cool.
Super badass trip. We did a couple nights in hotels, but hit a bunch of national parks on the way up, and then all through Canada was just badass. Hitting hot springs, and... It's not a super, driving to Alaska is not a super kid-friendly trip because it's mostly old folks in RVs. And so I kind of started feeling bad for my daughter about halfway through the trip. I'm like, dude, there's no kids out here. Mm-hmm. But the next best thing to kids for a 7-year-old girl is retired old ladies in motorhomes.
Oh, yeah.
So she made fast friends.
Yeah.
That was a killer trip.
So I mean, obviously we're not here to talk about that trip, but that's just the feat of that mileage in that truck with a young kid. I mean, not that 7's that young, but that's still, you're having to, they can't exactly fend for themselves at that age. So that's
core memories.
That's ambitious.
Dude.
Yeah.
Core memories, dude. We were at a campground. We were in Glacier National Park. It was early in the season, so it's still pretty cold. There's nobody in the campground. And I give her a handful of quarters. I'm like, we haven't showered in like 3 days. Like,
yeah.
Go in there, find a way to put the quarters in. I go and shower, come out, and dude, it's freaking cold. And I'm just sitting there like shivering, and she comes out, she's like, I can't do it. Dude, like 2 or 3 times I sent my 7-year-old daughter back into the campground. I'm like, dude, you gotta take a shower.
Yeah.
Finally, an old lady comes out with like her little bag and stuff. She's like, your poor daughter. She's like, the shower she was trying to use was broken, and I had to show her that like it was like this whole big emotional thing for this 7-year-old girl to go shower by herself, and
totally.
But she did it, you know. And there was a lot of those little situations where you watch your kid mature right in front of your eyes.
No, absolutely. But that's cool. Props for putting that together.
Yeah, it was fun.
And so, well, another one that I know about since I've been following you is the Alkin 5000, 500, 5000?
Alcan 5000, yeah. Dude, I've been thinking about. I don't even know where I heard of that. I think especially most like off-road oriented people, when you hear that, you're kind of like, oh, I've heard of it. I don't remember where I got the bug in my ear to do that.
I heard about it from you. I'd never even heard of it before.
I don't know where I got it from.
So what's that? That's like a road rally.
It's a time, speed, distance rally. So first of all, finishing that trip, short. I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Yeah.
Took 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks drive up there with my daughter. Put the truck in storage in Alaska. Flew home for the summer. Worked for the summer. My dad and I flew back up, picked up the truck, drove the Dempster Highway, which is 450 miles of gravel, to the Arctic Ocean and back. And then my dad and I, we only took like 10 days. We jammed. But so that completed that trip. And that, dude, you have to like driving. It's a lot of miles, but dude, it's miles and miles of beautiful North America and pine trees and wide open. Dude, it's bitching.
Yeah.
And so I was all about it.
And
so
was it super desolate up there, like just nobody out there type thing, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of little towns, but like, yeah, you'll go days without seeing a town with a good sized market. So it's
Interesting.
Well, especially as you get real far north. You're in like, we call them Eskimos. That's probably a little offensive, but
yeah,
you're in native reservations and stuff. But it's pretty remote, and I had by the grace of God, no mechanical issues that whole like 10,000 mile drive.
Yeah.
So I was just stoked. Going back to that area, like I'd love to do it again because it's just beautiful, and it's just you get in the truck every morning and you look out the windshield and just the road rolls out with pine trees and rivers, and it's just it's killer. But
And was there much dirt like once you got further north, or is it all
the entire Dempster Highway, which leaves Dawson City, which is like the home of the Klondike Gold Rush?
Mm-hmm.
From there, it's 450 miles of gravel to the Arctic Circle, which has been getting nicer and nicer because everything I was reading was like, hey, the road's pretty rough, like carry 2 spares, and I think they've been doing serious improvements on it. Because, dude, I'm in a truck on 37s with big shocks. I'm just doing 75 miles an hour, but to prove the point, like on the way back, there's a bunch of ferries, so you have to stop and take the ferry across a bunch of rivers, which is cool. Dude, I'm driving along at 75 miles an hour down a gravel road lined with pine trees, which is pretty comfortable. It's a nice, pretty wide road. Mm-hmm. And I'm like looking in my mirror. I'm like, dude, somebody's like on me. And then you stop to wait for the ferry. Dude, it was a Ford Escape. You're like, you feel like you're out here doing like something super cool, and you're like,
yeah,
dude, the locals all just jam down these roads. The point is that the roads are getting better and better up there.
Got it.
Yeah, but now most of the Alcan Highway now is paved. There's a couple stretches of maybe 5 or 10 miles that are like really nice hard packed, but you could do it in Miata.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And so you finished the Alaska trip with your daughter, but so you flew back, then you finished it with your dad, and then so the Alcan 5000 was a totally different trip.
Yeah, totally separate trip. And after that, with that truck, continued to go on a bunch of cool trips. Loved that truck. Did a bunch of cool Utah trips. And somewhere along the lines, I was ready to get something a little smaller, a little more nimble. So I ended up in the F-150. But yeah, I heard about the rally. I don't remember how. And I start, it's midnight. You're sitting there drinking whiskey in your underwear, like everybody does. You're like, oh, this looks cool. And you start reading all the details. And I was like, dude, I want to do this. So I put my name on the waiting list, and like, because they limit it to, I think in the summer it's like 25 cars and like 25 motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And I was on the waiting list, watched myself kind of work my way up. I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. And like, asked my dad if he wanted to go, and he's like, my dad likes to have fun. So if I'm like, hey, you want to do X, Y, and Z? He's like, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
And so put my son, who was 9 at the time, in the back seat. So extra cab pickup truck with 3 people in it for, what was that, 3 weeks? Oh, dude, can never like stop adding fun things to the calendar because the rally starts in Seattle, Washington, and it goes north into Canada. You're right, you're real close to the border. There's if you're into the OBS truck world, some of you Bronco guys, there's an OBS truck show in Northern Oregon.
Okay.
And I was like, well, the rally starts this day, like 2 days before it is the OBS truck show. Like,
we gotta go.
I'd be an idiot not to go. So what do? We take a 3-week trip and we leave 3 days early to go to Oregon and just crash. And it was still kind of like COVID, so it was still kind of funky getting a hotel and stuff. But yeah, so went to the OBS truck show, hung out with the Desolate Motorsports guys who'd helped me build my truck and park my truck in their booth. And dude, my son was a trooper, dude. To sit at a truck show for 2 days, that is a super awesome show, though. That was a ton of fun. It's the truck show is held at a antique semi and antique tractor museum, and it's a park. Okay. So you're basically camping in like an automotive related park, and then you have a car show. Okay. So, do you know what TSD rally is at all?
No.
So
I don't know any of these rallies here. Let me grab another pop here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking too much. But
no.
So my first experience with the rally was my uncle is real into motorsports. He's done several rallies. He's done the La Carrera Panamericana, which is a rally the length of mainland Mexico. He's done that twice. My dad navigated with him in that. And then he's done what's called the Great American Race, which is pre-World War II cars rallying from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so I was like 14 years old. My uncle had a 1929 Model A Speedster, so open top car, aluminum body, Model A. Said, hey, do you want to run the second half of this rally with me? You got to learn how to do the rally math. Why not? So I navigated in his car from Albuquerque, New Mexico to San Diego, doing time, speed, distance. So the way time, speed, distance works is they give you a route book, turn by turn, where you're going, and they tell you what speeds you need to average. So you're going to go down Main Street at 25 miles an hour. Well, first they'll give you a start time. So there'll be a start time plus your car number. So if start time is 8 o'clock, but your car number 21, you've got to start at 8:21. So you go through your route book and you add your car number in minutes to every time through the whole route book. And the Alcan Rally notebook is, it's 50 pages or something. And so they tell you, okay, you're going to average 25 miles an hour. At some point, they'll give you a reference point. It could be a speed, could be anything. Could literally say Aunt Daisy's apple pies speed change to 45 miles an hour. And so they give you all these speed changes and then a bunch of turns. So the moment you leave at 8:21 is your start time, you're supposed to be doing 25 miles an hour, you start rolling, well, you're already late because you're theoretically supposed to be doing 25 miles an hour, but you're stopped. So you've automatically got to do the math to go, okay, how much do I have to catch up? And there's a lot of different ways you can kind of do that math. I was doing it basically kind of the old school way when I did it in that Model A, but the proper way to do it is the night before. You go through your route book and you lay out, okay, if I'm going to be at this mileage at this time, at this speed, theoretically, and you make yourself a chart of, okay, at mile 102.2, I should be there at 10 a.m. and 37 seconds. You create all these charts, so as you're driving along, watching your odometer and watching the clock, you're going, okay, we should be here at this time. Okay, we're 2 seconds early. You tell the driver to back off a little bit. Okay, we should be here at this time. Okay, now we're 1 second early. And you're making all these adjustments, telling your driver to speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down, while following a series of left, right instructions. And most rallies will take you through some kind of maze, where instead of just driving down the interstate, they'll take you into an industrial park or residential neighborhood where you're going right, left, and the car in front of you is coming at you in the intersection, and then you're merging this way, and you're looking and go, well, that car is behind us, and they'll intentionally kind of make a big puzzle. And so you've just got to look at your numbers, go, nope, we're on time, we're late. But every time you hit a stop sign, every time you hit one of these obstacles, all these rallies, you're theoretically abiding by the speed limit, but they make it difficult to maintain the speed limit. So as soon as you make a mistake, you're late and you're trying to haul ass. Which that's where the fun part comes in, is when you're late.
So like if let's say you get a flat tire, so you're obviously going to be hauling ass to make up for that time.
Luckily we run good tires, and it was never an issue. But it's most common thing is you're just going to get lost. You're going to be looking at the instructions. You're just going to tell your driver, okay, pull over and stop. And drivers hate being told to stop. And you go, okay, turn right.
Wow.
And it's on the clock. It's not door-to-door racing intensity, but it's precision driving. You've got to make sure you're in the right place at the right time.
And so on this Alcan 5000, you said your dad cruised with you. Was he navigating the whole time, or
he was driving. He wasn't interested in doing the rally math. Because it's a lot.
That's your job. So you're navigating.
Yeah, the way the Alcan Rally worked is it's a lot of miles. I mean, if you want to go do 500 or 600 miles driving to, freaking Texas. You just get on the interstate, you set the cruise control at 85 and you're just cruising. But if you've ever driven in Baja or like when you're on 2-lane, like small roads, 600 miles is a pretty steady, solid day. So by the time you get into town, you're staying at hotels the whole time. If you go online, you look at the Alcan Rally website, there's an entry fee. It's $2,000 or $3,000. It includes all your hotels. So every night you're cruising into a hotel, get your bags. It's usually 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You check in, you go down to the bar, you have a drink with people, you hang out, and then you go up to the room, and then you got to do your notes for the next day. So most nights, my dad was there hanging out, watching Fox News, relaxing, and I'm over there freaking making all these little spreadsheets of all the times for the next day, and.
That's like a totally foreign, like motorsport. I've never even thought about doing anything like that or heard of that. Honestly, that's crazy.
It's a cool little niche. I found there's a couple local rally clubs that do a lot of stuff like Santa Clarita, Palmdale, Tehachapi, some of the scenic roads out there. And it's funny, they're car guys, but it is the nerdy side of the car world. These are accountants and people, because there's people that are so good at it, dude. Yeah. There's people, at the end of the Alcan Rally, dude, the top guy was like, I don't know, like less than a second off the pace, and I was, 500 seconds off or something. Wow. So there's people that really, really get into it, and they're car guys, but they're not necessarily like super car guys.
Well, and then I remember, I'm like Rain Man, weird memory guy, but I remember you talking about, I don't know if you were telling me about it or if you posted it on like Instagram or something, but you're talking about how like you were wrenching on your truck, like getting something ready, and like there was no one else like working on anything. It was just like you and some other dude out there in the parking lot.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah, most of the people. Yeah, at these couple of local rallies I've done, there's maybe a Subaru WRX and maybe like a Miata, and there's a couple of kind of semi-interesting cars. But those are people that they want to be on time. Their focus is not on, hey, what's the valving in your King shocks? Their focus is in like wanting to be accurate. So they're going to choose a Honda Accord. And you're like, dude, really? Yeah. But the Alcan Rally, that's a different enough crowd to where there's some cool stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And there was one dude, he was about our age. Dude, he was driving like a 1980 something Audi, all-wheel drive, 5-cylinder. He'd built the motor, had a big turbo on it. It was like a 400 horse Audi wagon. And he was the only other dude that was out there like wrenching in the parking lot, and like everybody else is just go in and they're driving. And there's some cool cars, don't get me wrong. Somebody does the winter Alcan every year in like I'm gonna get this wrong, but like a 1974 Ford Capri or something.
Wow.
So there's some older cool cars that run it, but
it's just a different like walk of life. When you're talking about like wrenching on stuff in the parking lot, I always think back to like I don't know if it was a bachelor party trip, but we were doing Mojave Road to Laughlin and back, and like all of us, when we get to Laughlin, we like partied the night before, and then we're all doing like a full prep in the parking lot. Like Jesse's welding his alignment cams with 3 batteries, and it's like that's our
normal, for sure. Yeah, so, you're carrying a welder, you're carrying full sets of tools. And
it's just a different, it's not like one's not better than the other. It's just a different walk of life.
Yeah, for sure. But it is cool because it's a group of people that still want to go out there and push the limits. Like there was a section where we did about 300 miles between fuel stops, which like generally speaking, you top your car off and you look at the gauges, you're like, oh, it says 350 miles empty. So you think 300 miles isn't that big a deal. But, when you're in, the Northwest Territories and you're on a gravel road and you haven't seen a gas station in 10 hours and your gauge is getting there and it's starting to touch the red, you're like, I hope this gas station's here. And then you do get into town and it's one pump, and so you're all waiting in line. So that's fun. Part of the camaraderie of the Alcan Rally is like you don't want to be last, and it's a long day. So like, you don't want to break anything, and like you don't want to be the last guy at the end of the day if you do have an issue. So you kind of want to run. So let me back up. The way the rally works is, most days you wake up in the morning, get checked out of the hotel, you're up at 6 or 7 a.m., get all packed up, get your bags in the car, and then you'll have a time speed distance section, which is typically lasts less than an hour. So it'll take you outside of town, maybe it's usually some really beautiful scenic road around a lake or some parks or something, and it's about an hour of following your very strict instructions. And that's when you're on the clock. And most TSD time speed distance rallies now, you're using an app. So it's tracking you and they have digitally selected a GPS point where that checkpoint is. So you come around a corner, you don't know where that checkpoint is, but you're running this rally app, and it just goes ding, 2 seconds late, or ding, half a second early. And so as you're doing that, you're able to make adjustments, but you have no idea where those checkpoints are.
I could just see me like 45 minutes late. I'm like,
Yeah, like, oh, well, shit, yeah. But that lasts about an hour, maybe 20, 30 miles of that. And then you're just what they call in transit. Then you're just trying to get to the hotel at the end of the day.
Got it. Okay,
And-
so my thought was with that, like it being so many miles and like so intricate, it becomes like super stressful, so you can't even enjoy it. But it seems like it's kind of part of it is intense, and then it's kind of
It's a mix of the two, because like you'll see, you're like, oh, look at that museum, oh, look at that lake, and you're like, dude, we got 400 miles of hotel, like we're not stopping. Like there was one day where they had scheduled 2 different TSDs in the same day, and dude, it was fun. You know, like you like thrashing, you like driving fast, you like, you know, a little chaos on your vacation, you know. And we'd done this long TSD section that took us out. This is like the second day of the rally. We're in like British Columbia. It's beautiful. And all these dirt roads out around this lake. And then, you know, you can only drive so fast. You're in like farms, and there's like deer, you know, running across the road. It's super bitchin'. And then you kind of get back on the pavement, and you're kind of flipping through your notes. You're like, okay. And there was, on this particular day, 2 TSD sections. The next one's like 100 miles up the road. My dad's driving, and everybody loves to drive fast. And I'm like, I think we're late. And like, as I'm saying late, I can like feel my dad like putting the foot to the floor, you know. My truck's got no horsepower. He's like over the double yellow, like trying to pass people. And I'm like, Dad, will you back off? He's like, am I making you nervous? I'm like, no, I just built the truck, and I don't trust the truck that much. But so we're thrashing. We're doing like 80 miles an hour up the highway. And then we literally roll up, and there's a cone right where the stage starts, and the rally master is kind of sitting there. And I look at the clock, and I'm like, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, go. I'm like, oh, bitchin'. And like, and we hit that. We did good on that stage. And then at the end of the day, the rally master was like, yeah, there was way too many miles. He's like, everybody blew that stage, so I ended up deleting it. I'm like, motherfucker, like, do you know how hard we worked to be there?
We were right on time.
Yeah, so it is kind of funny, because
yeah.
like you're looking at the route book, and you look out the window, there's lakes and mountains and snow. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 seconds early. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, 1
Yeah.
second late, you know. So
I could see that, and especially being up in that zone. Like if you're here in the city where you see it every day, whatever,
Yeah.
but up there you're like.
But if you wanted to go with your wife on like a scenic vacation through Canada, don't do the Alcan, because like you're hauling ass every day.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it becomes a marathon after a few days.
Sure.
So like, but the funny thing is, you'll open the route book. You're okay. There's only so many roads through like Canada. They'll say like, turn right on Highway XYZ, go 200 miles. You're like, oh, all right. Well, we can take a nap. You know, like that's it. You know.
Yeah, I'm
Cool.
off. I'm gonna listen to a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, right on. So, and you built the truck that you took on our Los Pinos 250 for that Alcan trip. That's the same F-150.
Same truck.
That's Brittany.
That's Brittany.
Got it. Okay.
I was trying to think of a hot girl name when I went to name that truck.
Just Britney Spears came to mind, or just
Not
listening
Brittany
to...
necessarily, but
Okay.
like I started thinking of hot girl names. Once you start thinking of names, kind of like naming a kid, and you're like, oh, I've got an aunt named that. Oh, my friend's wife is named that. And I was like, in high school, Brittany was a hot girl name.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't necessarily build Brittany for that. I built Brittany to be a do everything truck. Mm-hmm. Brittany came to life when I had the Dodge. I loved the Dodge. I'd wheeled the Dodge a lot. Couple trips to Utah wheeling it. Like it was a really good do everything vehicle, but it's a 3/4 ton diesel truck. It's big and heavy.
Sure.
And at the time, my buddy Paul was building he had a long travel Bronco. We were like, drinking beer in the garage, like real scientific. We're like, the wheelbase is 139, like that's shorter than the Dodge. Like, okay, TTB front end, okay, V8, okay, short bed truck. Like, dude, you can do it all with this truck. Mm-hmm. So really started thinking about it, and there was never anything bad with the Dodge. I loved that truck, and dude, my daughter cried when I sold that truck. We'd had a lot of memories in it. But no, I wanted something a little more nimble, something that would still cruise down the highway at 75, and so it was a very distinct plan. I'm looking for an OBS Ford, extra cab, long bed, F-150, automatic, and found a bitchin' one right before the OBS stuff started getting expensive. I paid $3,000 for that truck.
Shit, that thing's probably worth 10 now plus
Dude,
stock.
Right. It was a grandpa truck, dude. It had a bug deflector on it, had mud flaps.
Exactly what you needed.
Trailer brake. Yeah, it was freaking bitchin'. And literally, like, I drove the thing around town for like a week or two before I pulled it in the garage and just started stripping the suspension because I got good money for the Dodge, and so I knew exactly what felt like good money at the time. And so, no, bought the truck and just wrote a check for all the parts and started going. And
there you go.
And that truck, it's been...
And it seems to do pretty good.
It really is. It's a good... The only... I would say it's a mistake, but I've got a dual swinger crossover steering on it, which quickens the ratio. But then you've got a little bit of play in the Delrin bushings on the swingers and a little bit of play in all the Heims, but then a quickened ratio. So it's not super comfortable to drive on the highway.
This is like twitchy, or?
Yeah, it's a little twitchy, and part of it, the TTB stuff is kind of tricky to align. And I mean, I put 40,000 miles on it, so it's not unbearable. But like, you know, you were talking about how people, you go to King of the Hammers and you're trying to like shuffle all your crap out there. So a couple times my wife drove the truck back, and my wife's a trooper. She never complains about anything. And I was like, "Oh, how's driving the truck?" She's like, "Oh, everything was fine." She's like, "Drives like crap though." I'm like,
so she's just like all over the road, or what?
Yeah, it was a camber situation. So the cut and turn beams that I put on it were from, let's say, not one of the industry leaders, and that was one of my biggest problems. So since I ripped everything apart and I put Desolate Motorsports radius arms and beams on it, and I got the caster corrected and the camber corrected, it's a lot better now. It drives really nice. It's not like, you know, driving a Subaru down the road, but you can finally just sit there with, you know, easily one hand on the road and on the wheel.
And how would you say, compared to the solid axle Dodge, is it just night and day better in the desert? Or
it is. That stuff always sneaks up on you, because it's like, when I first got the truck together, I had Bronco springs in the rear, which are too stiff for a truck. It was COVID when I bought the shock, so it was a Craigslist deal where I'm like driving to San Diego to buy shocks out of like the trunk of a Corolla. With like mystery valving in the shocks. So like finally things are in the ballpark now. But the first trip I took the truck on, actually the first trip when I had the truck together, that campground we stayed at just north of Bishop, the last day of the Lonely Pinos, my wife and I camped there on our way to Tahoe in that truck on the very first trip. And the first couple times I got it in the desert, you know, you're bolting your shocks on your truck, you're like, I'm building a trophy truck. I'm going to be Ivan Stewart freaking smashing through the desert. And then you drive it and you realize this is not a trophy truck and you are not Ivan Stewart. So, you know, it's a filter, everybody. You've got to run your build like through that filter. To the point where like now as the valving's gotten better and the spring rates have gotten better and everything in the truck is way better, the truck does everything I ask it to really well, you're still like, it should be like this much faster.
Yeah, but I mean, like any build, it's a total evolution, and it's like this. It sounds like this is the fastest off-road vehicle that you've had to date.
Yeah.
So it's like you've kind of come up through the ranks from your K10 pickup that you had. You know, so, so anyway, so let's chat. So we've kind of learned a little bit about you. You've obviously, I didn't know that you did the 1000. That's awesome.
That was a fun opportunity. I mean, it was a peninsula run, so we had 4 or 5 different co-drivers, but that was a blast.
But it's I don't know, it's cool just to have like a sit down like this and, you know, learn. Like, again, Creeper followed you on Instagram for a number of years, and it's like, you know, you don't, you know, obviously it doesn't really come up in conversation, but anyway, so you on the forum, you were like, hey, let's do this Prelander trip. Let's bring the kids. Who's interested? And like, how did that? Like, what kind of sparked that? You just,
dude, we had such a great turnout. So I have this pet peeve of when like you want to go out to the middle of nowhere in your piece of shit vehicle and thrash it and do all this like shady like guy stuff. And what do? You would bring your kids because that's what you do, right? And you'll be talking to somebody. They're like, oh well, we can't really do any camping until the kids are older. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Like.
Nah.
My wife was pregnant when we were bouncing around in her Cherokee forever. So like, you know, you've got a live being in the womb that knows what these tires sound like on this pavement, you know, like, so like these kids, you know, they were comfortable riding this vehicle before they were outside the womb, you know?
Totally, yeah.
And so like, dude, take your kids.
Start them young, yeah.
Go. Like, there were a couple places, we had my wife's Jeep on like John Bull, I think, and she's like, hey, I'm gonna get out with like the baby and like go stand over here. I'm like, okay, cool. Drive through the rock pile. Oh, side note. You guys were talking about pinching brake lines with the vice grips.
Yeah.
That trip when she got out of the Jeep with the baby, ripped a brake line off the front of the Cherokee, self-tapping screw right into the hard line, dude. Didn't leak a drop.
Dude,
Yeah.
there's another fix
Yeah.
for you folks.
Yeah. My wife was smart enough to get out.
Did you have a self-tap or did you pull it out of the fender or something?
Dude, it probably came out of something. I don't remember. Yeah. The sketchiest part of that was driving home with only brakes to one front tire. You tap the brakes and the whole thing and like jerk. But anyway, so I'm a big fan of, dude, just take your kids, dude.
Yeah.
Like, dude, just let them hang out with the boys. I mean,
Sure.
like, you got to keep the conversation a little PG at times, but like, dude, take your kids everywhere.
Sure.
Just no matter what you're doing, take your kids.
And I mean, it's so for the. So we had our DMC group that we would do a lot of the point-to-point trips, and it's like now everyone got married and is having kids, and it's like our trips kind of have totally like had dwindled out. It just it's just tough to get 10 guys together with small children.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe when they're super young, it's tough to put in the miles.
For sure, yeah.
So a lot of like our group's trips have been more of like the base camp style. Like we'll go out to Ridgecrest or Glamis, and we'll kind of hang out, and maybe we'll go scope a couple points of interest. So I mean, for me, I would say this was probably one of my first like long distance trips with just my son, and he's 7. Your son's 13.
He's 11.
11.
Yeah, he's a tall 11.
Your daughter's 13.
Yeah.
But so, do you have to pack differently? Do you have to kind of think about the trip differently with kids?
I guess that's a fair point, is that I didn't necessarily do a lot of point A to point B trips with the kids. And when my daughter was 7, when we drove to Alaska, dude, we grabbed a hotel like 3 or 4 times, or like a cheap motel or something. So like, we'd stop and get a shower and a little bit of civilization. But yeah, doing a point to point, if you're trying to run to the Grand Canyon on all dirt with like a 3-year-old, like, okay, fair point. That's going to be a little difficult.
It's if you're doing it like, solo or maybe like with one other person, I would say it's a little more manageable. But if you have like, let's say we did that trip that we just did with 10 trucks, you have one, let's say somebody had like a 1-year-old. It's just like, you can't travel that speed with that young of a kid. It's once they're like at a certain age, I feel like
where I draw the line is when they can wipe their butt and buckle themselves in the car.
Correct.
Life, if for any of you guys with young kids,
yes,
when they can wipe their own butt and buckle themselves in the car seat, dude, your life gets so much better.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
No, I remember the first time, like, you got to show your kid how to like, go poop behind a bush with a shovel. Mm-hmm. That's life experiences, and like you shouldn't, they shouldn't be waiting till they're 18 years old to learn that stuff,
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, so you posted up wanting to do the Prelander style, point-to-point trip. The thread kind of took off with the typical heckling of like, oh, I don't have, you mentioned everybody needed 4-wheel drive. That was kind of a prerequisite. And you didn't want, blow-up dolls, and you wanted to keep it PG, I think was your terminology.
And it took a little while to kind of hit that stride, because we've all been on guys trips around the campfire where things get rated R, rated X real fast, and we're gonna have a good time, but like I was trying to set the stage that it wasn't going to be that rowdy, and I think it worked perfect.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
But so this was like a trip about, I would say, 6 months in the making.
Yeah, I guess it was
something like that.
So here's a pro tip: when you want to go to plan a trip, just put it on the calendar and tell everybody you're doing it, and then you're kind of stuck doing it.
Yeah.
So that's true. That's if somebody's like, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to go. Dude, throw a dart at the map and tell your buddies you're going, and then figure out the details afterwards.
100%. And so we, as far as our DMC group, have done a ton of trips, and usually Scott, SD Curdy with the Forerunner, he was on this trip. He would kind of plan it out, and I would, maybe look at the points of interest, and I would be involved with the planning. And so this was all on Lance, and he was, he kind of took it on, and he kept it all kind of a secret, which was like super cool. And you had your reasonings why.
Everybody, it's silly, but like I said, you can't sleep. It's 11 o'clock. You're sitting in the living room on your laptop in your underwear drinking a whiskey, and you're like, well, Lance says we're going to take XYZ road. I did that once and blah, 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 blah. Or I think this road would be, so like, you just kind of protect yourself from everybody's opinion. Not that everybody has bad opinions, but, well, and then the other side of that, I didn't know where we were going to go. We've been fighting all this snow.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to really plan the exact route. And this group of people, I think the general Bad Lines, Good Times crowd understands, like, dude, this isn't Mozart. This is rock and roll. You're gonna be making shit up as you go along.
Yeah.
And everybody seemed like totally cool with that. But I know, especially if you haven't done a lot of this type of stuff, you're gonna be like, well, he said we were turning on this road, and oh my gosh, I've never been here, and now somebody's all nervous, you know.
Totally.
And so like,
well, and so basically, what I'm getting at is he didn't like send the map out ahead of time. Like Scott will have a tendency to like, hey, this is the route we're doing. And so I can remember on numerous trips where everyone would have it in their GPS and Scott would deviate from the route and somebody would be like, you're not on the route. And it's like, dude, I'm going the right way. Like, shut up.
No, well, the first time I'd been exposed to that was with my buddy Chris Ridgway, he's a big fan of this type of travel. He's got a TTB Econoline van that just got LS swapped. And he planned a big Utah trip. And it was kind of the same thing. I was like, well, where are we going? He's like, just show up.
Yeah.
Well, where are we going? And then, dude, he had this bitchin' route planned from basically Lake Powell, and we went all the way up to like central Utah on as much dirt as possible. And like every day you'd wake up and be like, well, we're just following Chris.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty in that of just, you know, like I can be a control freak in my work environment, but there's just playing follow the leader. But it's fun not knowing where you're going.
100%.
You know?
I thought it was rad.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, some of those roads we had done, and we didn't even really get into where we kind of, you know, where you routed it. So we started, well, you guys started it, where exactly was the original? Was it like Olancho where you started?
Yeah, so right outside of Lone Pine, and it's a BLM campground, it's no secret at all. Right before Lone Pine, if you go up towards Mount Whitney, up into the hills, the Tuttle Creek campground. It's at like 5,000 feet, so you're up at some elevation. There's a little creek. There's some cottonwoods, and so we started there. I picked that just, you know, it's a good place that everybody can meet that you can find on Google Maps and just land at, and it's a good place to meet up at. I didn't know how many people were going to meet up there or not, so that was a starting point. And I told people to get fuel before they rolled into camp because I didn't want to go back into Lone Pine. We just crossed the highway and jumped on the dirt just south of Lone Pine. You never know what people's experience levels are, but I didn't realize how many of the DMC guys or Bad Lines guys, like everybody seemed to know these areas pretty well. So like, you know, there might be a new road here or there, but like most of this crowd have been to the hot springs and have blasted up, you know, 395. So none of that was new, but there's so many roads out there. Like when we got back towards Big Pine and we were jamming up that road past that satellite farm, and you guys were like, oh no, dude, if you're on the next road over, there's like springs over here. I'm like, oh cool, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But
I've never been to those springs either, but yeah.
The ones in Saline Valley?
No, I've been to the Saline Valley ones, but the ones near those satellite dishes.
Oh, what are they called in Bishop Warm Springs or something?
But yeah, it's cool. So I mean, you posted up the rough idea. We ended up with like 10 trucks.
Yeah.
And it was 5 kids. Mine being the youngest, or maybe
how old's Connor?
7.
Okay.
Maybe
Wesley.
Yeah,
Brandon's boy was the youngest.
But yeah, super cool. And we did. You guys ended up doing the full 250 or something near that.
Yeah, we mainly just went over Cerro Gordo before we met up with you guys, which would have been a lot cooler if the ghost town was open. But the whole dynamic there, that ghost town's changed since it's been purchased, But either way, it was still a cool road. Went up and over the top, and it was still a good day.
And you guys hit a little snow up there, like a couple patches.
Yeah, it was because, you know, like I said, I make it sound so easy to plan a run. Pick a spot and just go. Don't be a little bitch. But then, like, you start feeling the pressure. I'm looking on the forums. I'm like, oh, there's some people are going to show up. Like, we're going to have a good turnout. And, you know, we've got rain or snow up there every weekend. For 10 weeks in a row.
Sure.
So, you know, my dad, always down for a good time. I'm like, hey, he's got a nicely built 2nd gen Raptor. I'm like, what are you doing this weekend? He's like, oh, nothing. Like, you want to jam up to Lone Pine? He's like, yeah. So we jumped in his truck and just buzzed around and basically hit snow here and then hit snow here and checked out. I did kind of pre-run that route, basically east of 395 from Big Pine up to the Railroad Museum. So I knew where that cool canal road was. Mm-hmm. And then we hit snow a couple other places, so we went back to Lone Pine and had a couple stiff drinks and drove home. I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of got burned on some of that. But, you want to, you don't want to get a group of people lost, but it's, dude, it's the desert. There's a lot of roads that go the same places. So
it's got to be somewhat an adventure.
Yeah, and it was perfect.
Totally. And I mean, so as far as like you did a nice write-up on the forum, just yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
So obviously that's available to scope out. But I mean, as far as like, the highlights and the lowlights of the trip, I mean, highlights were for sure just the views.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is like how much water was in Death Valley.
That was a trip.
It was freaking unreal. Like we were driving down that Saline Valley Road into Saline Valley Warm Springs.
That canyon has a name. I couldn't find it, but yeah, as you go from Saline Valley Road, you're up on you're in a saddle looking into Death Valley on one side, Hunter Mountains at like 8,000 feet, and then you drive north and you drop into Saline Valley. And dude, we were crisscrossing a creek that I don't think that creek runs every year. That creek probably only runs, once every 10 or 15 years. So
yeah, and I mean there was like solid 5 inches of water in that thing when we crossed it, and it was rushing pretty good. That's just crazy.
That was a treat for sure.
And then so that was cool. The Ken with his not I guess that wouldn't be considered a highlight, but him blowing the radiator hose like
that was kind of a highlight. Dude.
10 miles into the route.
That's the perfect amount of drama. It's just enough to remind every one of us that our truck could catastrophically fail at any minute.
Yeah.
And then I was busy taking pictures, and I'm like, there's a point when it transitions from like I have an issue to like, hey guys, I have an issue.
Yeah.
And totally. Ken was still just totally handling it. I'm like, oh, it looks like they've got it going on or whatever.
And that he's got that mega cab Dodge, and that radiator, let me tell you, that thing's thirsty.
You're right. Yeah.
I think he poured like 3 gallons of mixed coolant in there, and then the thing was still drinking. I was like, dang. So I had to break out the 5-gallon jug.
Yeah.
It's always like, why do I bring this big old jug of water? I never get into it, and then there you go.
Little smallest truck on the run, feeding the biggest truck on the run.
Somebody's got to do it,
That's right. We all use this griddle though. So.
Yeah, and then at least, I mean, if he would have thought about it, he could have, had that radiator hose blow a little later in the run near those satellite dishes. When I soaked my air filter, we could have just wringed out the filter into its radiator. Yeah, so I had a little, ran out of talent, kind of misjudged a water crossing in the Mouse. I mean, I've had that truck for 14 years. It's had no inner fender wells for probably 12 of those 14 years, and I've never sunk it in a water crossing, but I just came in a little hot, and...
I don't think you're being fair to the situation. I think nobody had a mechanical issue in like 6 hours, and you were a little bored.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? Let's make something happen. It was a fantastic place to freaking have a little minor mechanical in the water, dude. It was scenic. The weather was good. Everybody was ready for a little break.
The water was a little brisk.
Was it? Yeah.
Dude, Ken, he's like standing next to me, and I've got the driver door open, and I'll never forget. So Connor is like, Dad, what are we gonna do? And so basically at this point, we hit the water, like full splash mountain. The truck just shut off, and we're like a third of the way through the water, and I think at the beginning it was a hair deeper. I'm just gonna give myself that. I'm gonna say it was like 10 inches deep. It probably wasn't, but where I had stopped, it was like maybe 6 inches, maybe. Yeah. And so Ken's like, dude, I'll just throw you the tow strap, and you don't have to get out. Meanwhile, Connor, my 7-year-old, is like, I'm calling Mom. And I'm like,
why?
So
you haven't said anything in an hour, and that's what you come in with?
He gets on my phone, and he's like trying to FaceTime her, and I'm like pulling my socks off, and Ken's like, no, you don't need to get out. Like, you can just climb over, and I'll throw you the tow strap. I'm like, yeah, but I still need to hook it up. Like, that, no.
Yeah.
So I get out, and sure enough, like, I thought it was going to be like knee
up
deep.
to your knees, yeah.
It's like my foot was underwater.
Yeah.
And anyways, somebody is like, dude, your air filter's just completely soaked. We grab a flathead, pull it off, pull the hood off, and it started up though.
Yeah.
22 RE. Can't kill them.
I don't have any experience with Toyota stuff, so when it fired up, and I was like, dude, this thing sounds bad. And you're like, dude, sounds great. This is normal. I was like, well, that's normal. Okay, cool.
Sounds like a diesel usually.
We'll go with that.
I mean, it
Clack,
did.
clack, clack,
It
clack,
sounded
clack.
a little bad right out of the gate. I was like, I don't know if this thing's gonna go, but it, 22 RE
They
things.
heal overnight.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, and then you had like the quote of the day. So we blow the filter out with Shane's exhaust.
Yeah.
We just put the filter over the exhaust, and he gave it a little limiter. And Ken was saying like water is just bubbling out of the filter.
Perfect. Yeah.
But so you're like, well, it's already mostly dry, so it'll just dry while it's on the truck. Like, you're not gonna hurt anything.
Water
else.
injection. Yeah.
And so we just bolted it back up and continued on. And
Dude, I remember doing that on a Utah trip, that one I was talking about where Chris Ridgway wouldn't give us any of the route.
yeah,
And dude, we racked up some dirt miles, and it was dry and dusty. And we piled 6 dudes and 2 German Shepherds into one hotel room in Green River, Utah.
wow.
And I was like, I feel like my air filter's dirty. So I went out to the truck and I pulled off the K&N and I washed it in the bathtub of the of the freaking hotel. Because I had brought like the cleaning kit.
Yeah.
And dude, when we were checking out of that hotel, I looked in the bathtub. It was stained red with K&N oil. But anyway, yeah, pro tip. Wash your air filter in the hotel bathtub.
Yeah, there you go. I usually do it in the kitchen sink, and my wife gets pissed all the time.
Stains it red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not fancy. I don't re-oil it. I got the dry filters. the what is it? The AEM
Oh, you
dry
do? Okay.
filters.
Thought you were running the K&N with just no oil in it.
No. But yeah, so we did. That was really the only Ken and myself, and then you had a low tire at one point, but that's
It's still leaking. Yeah, I found it. There's like a slash sidewall on but I drove all the way home. Wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, that's pretty.
But that was something I learned on that trip, because right after that, and after we went to the Laws Railroad Museum, that was super fun. We
That
spent
was
a couple
cool.
of hours there.
That was really cool.
Yeah, the W kind of put a damper on things, but
Yeah.
the museum was still cool. But it was before that, when we went into Big Pine. This is like, I'm a big fan of like halfway through a dirt trip, I'll take like a gallon of water and just like wash my hair and my face, and you feel like a totally new person, once you clean your hair. Mm-hmm. Dude, we went into Big Pine for fuel, and I redid my ice chest. I dumped everything out, and then I bought fresh beer, and then I bought fresh ice.
Full reset.
Halfway through the trip, dude, fresh ice chest. Dude, it's like we had just left home.
Yeah,
That was great.
Yeah, that's I didn't even need to do that. I brought enough sodas apparently. And what I do, so because like I've been pretty used to the glamping in the motorhome, I was like, I have a 35 quart that lives in the Mouse, and I'm like, this isn't going to be a big enough cooler for, all our stuff for, what was it? I was only on the trip for 3 days, and so I brought a little soft cooler that's a 20 quart. That was kind of like the day cooler. So
Yeah.
I put all the stuff in the morning in that, so I wasn't getting into the other cooler. And so
Yeah.
that, I mean, the ice in any of these like roto molded coolers last forever, but
Yeah.
that was
If you put enough ice in it, yeah.
something new that I've never done.
Well, that was what was funny when we stopped when Kevin Bodge was overheating, which I don't know why the thing would overheat when you stick a 6-liter V8 in a little mini truck.
Yeah.
But
It's a Chevy.
we stopped to play in the snow, and I see somebody's like grabbing large snowballs and walking towards their vehicle. I'm like, dude, I'm low on ice. Yeah, so like,
Yeah.
packing the coolers full of snow halfway through the
I
trip
saw
was
you
good.
do that. I followed suit. I put a big chunk of snow in the cooler.
Well, that was the problem, was I was lazy and I got the snow that had dirt on the bottom, so it turned the cooler into a milkshake.
Yeah, well, that'll happen.
Meanwhile, friggin' Brandon Mill over there with the electric cooler in the back seat, like
Yeah.
like some kind of pinkies out,
Dude, that guy, so he's like Mr. Clean. If you don't follow him, he's a big prep guy. He's literally taking his power tank. We're at one of the campsites, and he's like blowing out his truck. I'm like,
Was
dude, are
he?
you serious right now?
Oh, that's funny.
It's awesome.
It was fun. That was the first time I'd met Brandon. That was the first time I met most of those guys. But no, hanging out with Brandon was cool. Like, I mean, being judgmental is wrong, but you can't go through life without judging people.
Sure.
I judge people by the quality of their kids, dude. And like, when you hang out with their kid and their kid's rad, you're like, they probably have rad parents. Mm-hmm. And like, dude, can't say, dude, all the kids on the trip, everybody, all the kids were freaking solid.
Yeah.
To me, that was highlight of the trip for me, I would say, was because my son, Walker, who's 11, he's got a sister. Our family friends we spend a lot of time with, they have daughters. So my son doesn't really get to spend a lot of time like with the boys. You know, he spends a lot of time with me and with his grandpa. But man, you weren't there, but the first night at Boxcar Cabin, when Brandon's son Wesley was just going around, he's just picking up rocks, dude. That's all he was doing.
Yeah.
And so I went into my truck and I grabbed like a 3-pound single jack and I gave the kids this freaking, dude, that was like 4 hours of entertainment. They were just going around just smashing stuff. And all the boys were just right there. You know, Brian's kid Seth was in there. Yeah. And dude, the boys were just being boys. And it was just...
Well, and that's what was super cool. I mean, with the, you know, our group that we've had, and I'm sure you've got the same situation, it's like you've kind of got your like vetted group of people that you know, that you wheel with, that you do these trips with. And so, you know, same for us. So now, like, with the forum being pretty new, this was honestly one of the first point-to-point trips that was organized on the forum. And so, you know, you as the organizer, a lot of these guys, like, yeah, you've seen the names, but you don't really know them. Like, you and I had never really hung out other than, like, I think we met at the expo.
Yeah, once or twice for a minute, yeah.
But it's like for 2 seconds, or it was at the cleanup.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But so it's, you know, the forum is definitely, you know, for somebody that's new, that doesn't have that group of people, it's cool to, you know, have this platform where you can find out about these trips. And obviously if you're on the forum and you know, see these people, you know, whether you're on there daily or weekly or whatever, you kind of get to know these people and know their trucks. And it's kind of a way to feel a little bit more comfortable, I guess, about who you're going out with.
Well, as you say that, I'm realizing, like, the forum is like this missing link between, like, if you're at the gas station and you meet some guy in a cool rig, you're like, yeah, dude, we should go to the desert. You're like, dude, this guy could be an axe murderer. Dude, he could beat his wife. I don't know this dude. And then, like, if you're in the desert and, dude, let's say you're at some remote location. Dude, I don't know. You're at Hole in the Rock, Utah in 4Low, and you run across somebody and you're like, chances are this guy's pretty solid. Well, the forum is like where those two different people meet. It's like a way of like vetting people.
Sure.
And, you know, not to say you aren't getting some keyboard warrior logging in there, but like, and that was part of why I laid out the trip the way I did. It was like, hey, meet here. We're going here and here. I don't know all the details. If you want to show up, show up. And that, in a way, it filters out the people who are like, you know, should I run 35 PSI or 34 PSI? You know, it's like, but the filter the forum as a whole does a good job of bringing the right kinds of people together.
Sure. And I mean, I feel like at this point, it's such a small group. Like, we don't have, like, you know, you go on, name a huge forum, like a Tacoma World, there's like 300,000 members. I mean, not that everyone's active, but it's like all walks of life. Whereas ours is, you know, pretty much mostly people that have built their trucks or are like heavily involved in the sport, or you know, some of them maybe just getting in, but it's mostly folks that are vetted, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's so many different ways to off-road, and like an analogy I use all the time is like, you ever been in like a town and you're driving down the big boulevard and you see a church, and then you see another church, you're like, why are there so many churches here? You're like, well, because there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing. And in the off-road world, like at Point Magoo 4-Wheel Drive Club, which I was president of for a couple of years, still very involved in, it's a lot of Jeep guys. And even in the off-road club world, there's a different flavor. There's a lot of different aspects to everything. And Point Magoo is heavy in land use. So if you just got a Jeep and you want to go out wheeling every weekend, Point Magoo's not doing a lot of that. If you've been off-roading your whole life, whether hardcore or just mild, whatever version of off-roading you're doing, but you're really passionate about keeping places open, fundraising, doing trash cleanups, like, that's your spot. That is Point Magoo's strong point, that's who it attracts. And then you look at Bad Lines, like, it attracts the people, like, the type of off-roading I love to do is point A to point B, as many dirt miles as possible. You know, the more remote, the better. And, you know, I don't want to go drive along at 20 miles an hour. You know, like, we want to be, you know, pick up the pace where you can pick up the pace. And then, like, realizing, like, all those people, they do exist, and this is where they hang out. Like, this is where you want to be, you know?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And it's like from years ago, was in like the Rover clubs. And it's like, I feel like some of the clubs, because I don't want to say they can get like stuffy, but you have all walks of life, and the common interest is, the make of the vehicle. And so like you might have a guy that's a hardcore wheeler that's, got a complete raisin of a truck, and a guy that's like polishing it, and they're both in the same club. Whereas like I would say our form members are kind of all on the same page of like into using the vehicle more so than how it looks. And anyways, so
yeah, but to your point, you could be out there doing what we like to do in a brand new Raptor, or you could be out there in a freaking 93 Tacoma, like what brings you together is the style of off-roading.
Sure.
And that's kind of the same way different off-road clubs operate. And it's like, but you start as you get through life and you start to figure out who you like to who you have the most fun hanging out with. Because, I mean, halfway through that trip, I was like, dude, this is one of the raddest trips I've ever been on. And by the time we got to like the last night of that trip and we're sitting around the campfire, and I realized like talking, like everybody here, maybe not everybody, but like almost everybody had kids, everybody was married, and you're like, these people are literally like me. They're like, there isn't somebody here that's like doing some crazy weird thing. Like it really distills things down to people that you have a lot in common with.
Totally. And that was, why Wally and I tried to, made this. Like, obviously it was a spin-off of like Desert Rangers, but it's like the like-minded individuals, and it doesn't matter whether you've got a mega cab Dodge, what do we have, a Wrangler, a Power Wagon, you had your old body style Ford F-150, I'm in my little Toyota.
Yeah.
It's, we had a couple other, we had a Raptor and a Tacoma.
Yeah.
And then a Explorer. So it's like, it doesn't matter what you're in.
Yeah.
As long as you're cool and you're...
Well, and everybody was so like-minded, because like I'd been on trips where like somebody comes on the radio, they're like, hey, at mile 1.297, there's a 8-inch boulder near your passenger tire. You're like, dude, like really? And then like this group, like I feel, everybody has a little inner Boy Scout where they want to get on the radio and like tune to the right frequency and talk to your buddies,
Yeah.
But like it was just the right amount of communication about the right things. It was the right amount of like banter and like trash talking without like, it was just good. It was such a good group of people.
I agree.
The forum distilled down, and yeah, it was a great trip.
Totally, I agree. And so what's on the next on the horizon for you? You got any trips upcoming, or anything else that you're putting together?
I need to put something on the calendar. Like I said, just throw a dart at the map. I'm gonna do what's that trail everybody does? Mojave Trail in the fall with the Point Magoo guys.
Okay.
But no, the motor in my truck's getting pretty tired. It's got 180,000 on it. It leaks from everything. And I was actually looking at the calendar the other day. I'm like, I don't actually need my truck for a few months. I was like, it's probably time to go under the knife for a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to be doing some just little stuff through the summer, little camping trips and stuff. But no, I don't have anything major planned. If somebody else wants to plan something major, freaking do it, and I'll be there. Who's the down for mobbing guy? I always forget his name. Dude's super nice. He's got that sweet Ranger.
I'm totally blanking right now.
Dude, he's been trying to plan that like 850 mile run. Yeah. I ran into him at the Leduc swap meet. I'm like, dude, plan it. I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's gonna be gnarly, but I'll be there. It's ambitious for sure.
Dude, that's right up your alley.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like that's a trip where you've got to have like a few trucks, and it's got to be the right people, the right trucks, and the right mindsets for the people.
Yeah,
because those are long days, and all about those long days.
I do know about the long days. And honestly, one of the funnest days on the Alcan Rally was there was basically like a bonus line. They call it an extreme control, which is like a checkpoint way off in the middle of nowhere that you get extra points for going to do. And I'm going down a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. Dude, we were on, can't even remember the name of the river, Mackenzie River maybe. It was a Hudson Bay trading post from like 1850. The trading post existed on the river because the boats came up and down the river. The road didn't come in until later. So it was like 150 miles down this gravel road. Super bitchin' road. It looked like Utah. It was so badass. We get to this Hudson Bay trading post. You go in, you buy a postcard, take your feet off, dip them in the creek. And you're like, well, time to go. And then, dude, we ended up driving with the driving lights on. Dude, we rolled into, can't even remember where it is. Fort Nelson, somewhere. It's where the signpost forest is in Canada. We rolled in at like midnight to check into the hotel. But dude, we drove for like 4 hours with all the driving lights on. You don't see anybody. My point is, everybody puts driving lights on your rigs. We should use them.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
maybe this summer as the temperatures get warm, we plan like a summer, like a night run.
We hook up with like Baja Designs or something and see if they want to put something together. That'd be cool.
I very much enjoy the Light Force lights on my truck, but Baja Designs makes a killer product. We should.
Oh, what I mean, I'm just saying, like we could. Hey, I've got Hellas on mine. I've been thinking about switching to the.
Dude,
Baja
every time
Designs.
I look in my mirror and I'd see your old school Hellas, because I've been collecting those old school Hellas, because I don't know, maybe it's like my retirement plan that I'm like, someday you're not going to be able to get these things. So I've got like 10 of them in a box in my garage. But no, they're period correct. But the point is, like, you put badass lights on your rig, like, and then how often we drive in the dark?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like,
but that's like my light bar I was telling you on that trip. I literally never use it. The light bar I have to put up.
Oh, that's right. You got 4 more lights.
Yeah, it's got 4 lights on it, and it's just like, it's 2 bolts. It's a pain in the ass to put up. My front lights are bright enough.
Yeah.
But I
love driving in the dark because, like, you're so, like, if you're going to, like, look at the view, it's bad, but you're just like, this is where I'm going. I don't see any of that stuff. Like, this is what's happening.
100%.
Yeah,
I feel the same way about, like, riding at night on the mountain bike. Like, my fastest times, not that I'm fast at all, but like PRs down like Space Mountain here in Newbury Park is at night, which seems crazy, but it's like you're so focused on, you're not looking at like, oh, like look at those, those clouds off in the distance. You're just laser focused, and you could see obviously if anyone's coming the other way, like up the trail,
right?
Unless they were going without a light, but
that's cool. Your PRs are in the dark. Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with just heightened focus on only the trail. And
so maybe what we need to do is we need to run the Lonely Pinos 250 in the dead of summer and do the whole, we'll skip the hot springs. We'll just do the whole thing straight through in one night.
Let's go.
Dude.
I'm down.
It's on.
You heard it here first.
Yes. Cool. Well, I was putting the stickers together and my wife's like, why isn't it Lone Pine? I was like, because Lonely Pinos is fun. She's like, it sounds like penis. I was like, I know, babe.
That's funny.
What do you think makes grown men giggle? That's exactly why it's the Lonely Pinos.
It totally worked. But right on. Well, we'll have to have you on, I think, again, and we'll do a deep dive on maybe Brittany.
Okay.
Do like some kind of truck feature, maybe, because I know you've done a ton of work to that thing, and it's got some kind of customizations to fit your needs, which is quirky. Cool.
Yeah, they're all quirky.
But yeah, so thanks for listening in, and we'll catch you folks on the next one. Thanks, Lance.